morning. Welcome to the beloved community known as UU Amherst. I'm Scott Harrigan. I'm one of the members of the worship design team. And we realize you do have many options on your Sunday morning, and we're very grateful that you've decided to spend it with us. We send a special warm welcome to anyone who is joining by live stream, as well as those who will review the recorded version of the service in the days to come. Nursery care for infants through preschool is available every Sunday in the room just behind the atrium, through the green and growing space adjoining the chapel. Older children and youth may remain in the service as we engage in all ages multi-sensory worship. If kids need a break, there are quiet crafts and projects available in the atrium with our helping hand volunteer to supervise and help. For those gathered in the chapel, I invite you to put your phones on airplane mode, or as we like to call it, worship mode, so that you and all may be fully present and free from distraction, as well as freeing up web bandwidth so our live streaming friends are able to enjoy the service without disruption. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Our song of intention this morning is found in the gray hymnal, 38, Morning Has Broken. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the morning, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rainbow fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. White is the sunlight, white is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's soft play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
It is our custom when we gather to light a chalice. The chalice is a cup or vessel that symbolizes the gathered community. The flame represents the spark that each one of us brings to represent the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of our commitment to bring more compassion and justice to the world. Our chalice closely resembles the double ring chalice that was created when our blended faith family merged in 1961. Thank you, Kim and Ron. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Each week, as we light the chalice to symbolize the gathered community, we also acknowledge that our church is built on holy ground, ground that was first cultivated and occupied by the Haudenosaunee and those known as the Neutrals. We offer this libation as our giveaway, a symbol of our respect for and the deep connection with the land. We are a beloved community, a gathering of people who have chosen to journey together, to encourage one another, and to be part of something important and life-changing. Because we aspire to be such a people, we make bold promises about how we will be with one another. Whether today is your first time or you've made UU Amherst your longtime home, you are invited to share in our sacred promise. Together, we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world. Each week, we bring our whole selves, we have we're doing this part, whatever the slide says. Each week we bring our whole selves into this sacred time, our joys, concerns, and sorrows. The table where we gather is at the center of the space, a symbol of the community, and that is the heart of UU Amherst. I invite you to come forward and place a stone or shell on the table labyrinth in recognition of all that you bring and all that you are. Today, we especially hold Doreen Park in our thoughts as she grieves the loss of her mother. May we remember that we are called to heal and bring love into the broken places. Please remain seated as we sing 123, Spirit of Life.
Oh,
reading this morning is entitled, Let Us Drink from the Stories That Sustain Us All by Soul Matters founder, Reverend Scott Taylor. We gather as a house of stories, as a shelter shot through with memories that speak, that long for us to listen, without which we easily lose our way. And as we learn those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes more clear as we remember what they survived and what they sacrificed for the faceless us who would come after. We find courage far beyond what we could muster on our own. Beneath this seemingly worn-out world, there are wells from which we can drink. Come, let our thirst guide us there. Come, let those sweet ghosts whisper their gifts. We are pleased to again have John Snodgrass in our pulpit. John is a frequent guest at UU Amherst, and his thoughtful reflections are always informative and entertaining. John Snodgrass teaches religion courses at Canisius College and has written numerous books, including Supernatural Shakespeare and the sci-fi comedy novel 13th Moon. He lives in Buffalo with his bride and their 4 children. Please welcome John.
Good morning. Right now, before I even start this message, I've got to be upfront about this. Today's sermon is called Great Snakes, but at no point in this service am I going to handle a live poisonous snake. I am not a snake handler, nor am I a snake handler's son. Further back than that, I don't know. But I do know that I am descended from a long line of people who had the good sense to live long enough to have and raise children, so I'm going to presume that provoking poisonous snakes was not their weekend pastime. Or maybe all of my ancestors were snake handlers, and they were just really, really, really good at it. And here, I'm not talking about zookeepers and forest rangers, swamp tour guides and carnies. All of these people have a perfectly legitimate vocational reason to deal with snakes. I'm talking about snake-handling churches, or as they more commonly call themselves, the Church of God with signs following. The signs in this case being that members will speak in tongues, drink strychnine, and handle live rattlesnakes and other poisonous serpents. If the person does not get bitten, it is a sign that they are full of the Holy Ghost. If a person gets bitten and survives, it is a sign of divine healing, although survival often entails the immediate removal of a finger or two, amputations that must be carried out without the assistance of trained medical professionals, since that would be a sign of disbelief. And if a person dies of snake bite, it is clearly a sign not of lack of faith, but that it was that person's predestined time to go. Just to be clear here, as Unitarian Universalists, it's important that we respect all religious traditions. And I definitely do respect the powerful faith it takes to dare the Holy Ghost to save you from a terrified rattlesnake that you're wrangling in a room full of people who are loudly speaking in tongues. I know what you're thinking. Snake handling is not so much a demonstration of faith as a demand for proof, proving that Charles Darwin was right about reckless members of a species eliminating their genes from the pool. But there is no statistical evidence that snake handlers are less likely to have children. Actually, snake handling seems to be hereditary, and having a parent die by venom poisoning can even strengthen the faith. Pentecostal snake handling began spreading through Appalachia about 100 years ago. There's some debate about whether it first started in Tennessee, Georgia, or Alabama, and maybe it sprung up simultaneously and independently in multiple places. There is a quote in an addendum to the biblical Gospel of Mark. Quote, "And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, shall they speak with new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." Most Bibles preface this quote by saying that it was not included in the earliest manuscripts of the gospel and is probably spurious. This quote is in the Bible for entertainment purposes only. But I guess it seems harmless enough to include it anyway because of the unlikelihood that anyone would take it seriously enough to get themselves killed. By the mid-20th century, snake handling had become such a craze, and I mean craze here just in the sense of a popular thing to do, that the state of Georgia declared it a penalty, a felony, under penalty of death in 1941. This obviously didn't apply to people who got killed, but if the Holy Ghost protected you from the venom, they would put you in the electric chair. But Georgian juries would refuse to convict. The law, as they say, was essentially toothless. And they gave it up in 1968 when they had bigger things on their minds, mainly testing their faith in American colonialism by sending their sons to the snake-filled jungles of Vietnam. These days, the right to bear snakes in church is a protected religious liberty. Actually, snake-handling Christianity is somewhat in decline. There are only about 125 active snake-handling congregations today. That number might be a bit low. Snake handlers tend to be private people. Or that number might seem high if we consider that while we're sitting comfortably in this snakeless sanctuary, 125 people might be testing their faith by wrangling rattlesnakes at this very moment. And perhaps also listening to a sermon about Unitarian Universalists and how wacky we are. While modern biblical scholars widely agree that the snake-handling quote in Mark's gospel was probably tacked on as a later addition, the troubled relationship between humans and serpents appears in some of the earliest texts of the Bible. In the biblical books of Job, Proverbs, and Isaiah, God sets out to create the world from chaos and must first defeat and dismember a great serpent called the Leviathan. This primordial battle echoes similar snake fights in Mesopotamian and Egyptian mythology, and likely preserves the most ancient Israelite beliefs about creation. Those are the oldest creation stories. Now, the youngest creation story in the Old Testament is the opening chapter of the book of Genesis. The first chapter of the Bible since the priests who got last editorial control put their version first. In the 7-day creation story, God divides the swampy chaos into sea, sky, and land, and then on the 5th day created sea monsters and blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas." And then God creates land creatures, classified as cattle and creeping things. If we're reading the Bible sequentially, and the snakes haven't started creeping yet, I guess they would be classified as cattle. If we're reading the Bible fundamentally, this is back when people were riding dinosaurs. All of that can get pretty confusing. We got a second picture, please. The most famous snake story in the Bible is the 3rd chapter of the book of Genesis, where the serpent encouraged Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit on the tree of knowledge. God had warned the first couple that if they ate of that tree, they would immediately die. As a matter of fact, God says it twice. He says, "You will die, just to get the point across. And then God walks off. And this serpent walks up to Eve. Remember, this was before it got cursed to crawl on its belly. And it said, if you eat of that fruit, you will not die, but your eyes will be opened and you will know good and evil. And Eve said, holy crap, a talking snake. Actually, the Bible does not report what she said. Just that she and Adam ate, and their eyes were opened, and they realized they were naked. My son Malcolm recently asked me, wasn't that the devil who tempted them? And I said, well, no, the Bible never says or implies that it was the devil, just an ordinary talking snake. And actually, the snake told them the truth about what would happen. God was bluffing with that death threat. And they called the bluff, and then God kicked them out of the garden. It's kind of a wacky story, followed by one of the most comical moments in the entire Bible. When Adam and Eve hear God walking up afterward, and they hide, and God can't find them, and has to ask where they are and what happened while he was away. Apparently, this was before God's omnipotence and omnipresence had fully activated. It's possible that God himself was on his way to eat of the fruit of knowledge so that he could gain that power, and then got really mad about it. God got especially mad at the serpent, who apparently knew the secrets of life and death, good and evil. So apparently he had been eating from both of those trees. Anyway, God curses everyone. The snake first, who loses its ability to walk upright. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's true. The skeletons of certain snakes, including pythons and boas, still retain a vestigial pelvic bone. So apparently, these did at some point lose their legs, possibly in some kind of curse. Anyway, God curses the snake at some length, which again is strange because snakes don't have ears. But maybe they used to and also lost them as part of the curse. The snake does not lose its ability to speak with people, but God decrees an enmity between humans and serpents, so they don't talk with us anymore. We won't encounter another talking animal in the Bible until Balaam's talking donkey in the book of Numbers. Next slide, please. When it comes to the Bible, all things are possible. So I guess it shouldn't be such a surprise that the talking snake in Genesis is not the strangest serpent story in the Bible. There's also the story in which Moses gets into a contest with the high priests of Egypt, who call upon Egyptian gods to turn their sticks into serpents. And they do. And then Moses throws down his rod, which turns into a bigger snake and eats them. The oddity of this narrative is that the Egyptian magicians actually perform an honest-to-goodness biblical miracle. You'd think that the Bible would discredit the Egyptian gods, but it doesn't. It says that the Egyptian gods can turn a stick into a living snake, but that Israel's God can produce a bigger and meaner snake. Some commentators say that the Egyptian priests' rods were snakes all along, trained to stand stiff like walking sticks, but that only makes the Egyptian priests seem more impressive. But what tops even that as the strangest biblical snake story comes later. After the Hebrews have escaped from Egypt and received the Ten Commandments and wandered a while in the wilderness, eating some sort of food that falls from the sky, nobody knew what it was, so they called it manna, which in Hebrew literally means, "What is this?" Some scientists propose that it was some form of desert algae, or aphids, or insect secretions, or even bird droppings. Whatever it was apparently kosher. And they say that 2 million Hebrews lived on this for 40 years. Apparently it was all right, but kind of boring, and when some people complained of the taste, God punished them by sending fiery snakes who killed a bunch of people. When Moses spoke to God on behalf of the people, God did not take back the plague of poisonous, burning snakes. Instead, God told Moses to make a bronze statue of a serpent winding around a pole, and whoever looked at this would survive the venom. Apparently, nobody was concerned that the Ten Commandments forbade the worship of carved images, a crime punishable by death. Snakes on fire was the more pressing concern at the moment. It's one of those classic damned if you do, damned if you don't moments of the Bible. Even God seems to have temporarily forgotten that commandment. The brazen serpent does not get mentioned again in the Bible for another 500 or 600 years, until King Hezekiah of Jerusalem declared that the temple should be cleansed, that they needed to clean out all of the naked goddess statues and phallic pillars of Baal. And he also declared, it's really time we've got to stop people from burning incense in front of Moses' old snake statue. So he broke it to pieces. Apparently, it had been hanging out in the Jerusalem temple for centuries without anybody ever wondering if it was a sin to worship this thing. Anyway, the snake was finally gone from the Jerusalem temple, but its story doesn't end there, because Michelangelo painted it on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome, where people can still look upon its image and pray for a break from snake venom. Oddly enough, this biblical snake on a stick is not the origin of the pharmacy symbol, with the snakes entwined around the staff with wings. That comes from an ancient Mesopotamian symbol, later adopted by the Greeks. There are numerous legends attached to it, the most famous being that of Tiresias, a young man who accidentally, while out walking, witnessed two snakes coupling, and then struck them with his staff, killing the female. Angered by this, Hera, the queen of the gods, turned him into a woman, and he lived like that for 7 years, and got married and had some kids. Until one day she was out walking, and again saw two snakes coiling, and this time either killed the male or both, or left them alone. There are multiple versions of this. Whatever it was, he got transformed back into a man. And having looked at love from both sides, he was given special insight, which came in especially handy when he was later struck blind by the gods. The staff with the two snakes wrapped around it was then picked up by the Greek winged messenger god Hermes. But he's not a god of healing. He is the god of traveling salesmen. It turns out that the snake as a sign of healing is supposed to be one serpent wrapped around a stick, the rod of the healing god Asclepius. But pharmaceutical marketing firms find the two snake symbol to be doubly effective, because doctors never say, take one of these and call me in the morning. At least they don't say it while prescribing snakes. Last month, somebody asked me what my next sermon was going to be about. And I said, well, I've preached about cows and rabbits. And he said, you should do snakes. And I said, yes. And I'm going to call it Great Snakes. Because as a collector of antique slang, I'm concerned that the expression great snakes may be facing extinction. And it bothers me because of all of the great exclamations, which include Great Scott and Great Caesar's Ghost. I find great snakes to be the most evocative, even in its abbreviated form. The original, I've just learned, was Great Thundering Snakes. And I was excited because the snake gets such a bad reputation in religion. The Eden snake story is the most famous serpent narrative in the world, but really, it seems to have been part of an ancient smear campaign to discourage people from their positive associations with snakes, women, and trees. If we look at what was going on in Canaan, the land we call Israel, before the Hebrews got there, the most popular religion there was about women under trees, sometimes protected by serpents, enjoying, fruit, not apples. The apple is a Russian thing, but, figs. And then all of a sudden we get this story, and we say, oh, this was the story of actually some kind of little fundamentalist minority trying to stop everybody from worshiping their goddesses and trees and serpents. Well, it was obviously a very effective campaign, since most of my college students can't even conceive of the notion that snakes were once venerated in religion for their wisdom, immortality, and for being the protectors of ancient goddesses. But now we're running out of time. And since I'm the guy who brought up the Bible here, and I know that some of us here are refugees from Christianity, feeling like we've been bit by this particular story, the Garden of Eden story. And for some of us, seeing someone step up to the pulpit with a mouthful of Bible could even be more alarming than if I had brought a live snake into the sanctuary. But I believe that the antidote for the venom of Scripture, when you're looking for the antidote to anything, you find the antidote by studying the poison, by looking at it. And I think that the best way to defang these stories, these biblical stories, is to look at them and play with them. And you can find that playing with these stories is even safer than playing with live serpents. And since we're out of time for today's message, I'm going to end this one with "to be continued," because the next time I'm here, I'm going to share some interesting pagan snake stories. So, thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Please rise in body or spirit as we sing our response. We are dancing Sarah's Circle, which is 212 in the gray hymnal. We'll be singing verses 1 and 3 and 5. Note that the last phrase is changed to "we are siblings all" to make it more inclusive. Following the song, please remain standing as we close this portion of the service by extinguishing our chalice.
We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. Here we sing and find our here we are naming, we will all do our own naming. We are siblings all. On and on the circles moving. On and on the circles moving. On and on the circles moving. This our siblings all.
Would you all, yeah. We will extinguish our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated for a few brief announcements. As our service draws to an end, our service to the world is ready to begin. Let me tell you about some of the opportunities to connect and serve in the days to come. Next week's service will be our Soul Matters Sunday. There are many ways to come together in the beloved community. Next week, we'll explore more intimate conversations on this month's topic of heritage. This service will not be archived on YouTube to preserve the confidentiality of these conversations. Live streaming, however, will still be available. And Bruce, are you ready to come up?
So, everybody has an opportunity over the next 2 weeks to not eat. Get ready for the pancake lunch on October 15th, which will be the kickoff to this year's generosity campaign. So after service on Sunday, October 15th, immediately after service, we invite everyone to join us in the Amherst room for pancakes hot off the griddle. Your chef is standing in front of you. There will be a very brief presentation by the Canisius Committee. And for those who wish to submit their pledges on site that day, we'll never turn that down, but not necessary. So please, it is free. We will take free will donations, but there is no cost. There is no advance sign up. So plan ahead. Stop eating today and get ready for pancake lunch on Sunday, October 15th.
You should be really hungry by then. As always, see the church newsletter, the forward for information regarding upcoming services and events. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't invite you to participate in supporting the mission and ministry of our UU Amherst Church with your financial gifts. You'll find a green basket at the back of the chapel to receive your contributions, or you can give online by going to our website, uuamherst.org, and clicking on the giving link, or text your gift to the number you see on the screen. Your gifts and participation are important because we pick fruit from trees we did not plant, and we drink water from wells we did not dig. And this is as it should be, so long as we dig and plant for those who come after us. Your generous giving supports the work of this congregation. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing blessing. Remain standing afterwards for the benediction. Till I see you once again, travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. May the road rise to greet you as you leave your lives behind. I will think about you gently, and I'll hold you in my mind. Travel light and travel easy. You can look around. See you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. We do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel this way with us, so be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Go in peace.